Welcome back to another episode of the Roanoker Presents From Print to Podcast. I'm Liz Long, your friendly neighborhood editor, and in this episode segment, we're thrilled to bring you a special feature on Eric Fitzpatrick, an extraordinary Roanoke artist known for his ambidextrous painting techniques and his contribution to our 50th anniversary issue. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to him in his studio, which is really exciting. If you check out our video on YouTube, you're going to see a whole lot of really amazing technique, and I can't wait to dive into more of what we're going to find in the studio, because it really is. There's a detail in every single fabric of where we're stepping inside. And so also joining us today is our editor-in-chief, Kurt Rheinheimer. Thank you so much for being here today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And thank you, Eric, of course, for hosting us in your studio.
Thanks for having me, Liz.
We're so pleased, and of course, be sure, again, listeners, to please check out our YouTube page to get a peek at the artist in action and the incredible space he works in. And so we're going to dive right in, and we're talking about our 50th anniversary celebration, in part, that you kind of helped us, and you've been part of for the last 50 years, whether you realize it or not, Eric.
Hey, I've loved every second of it, and the Roanoker has been so good to me.
Thank you. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But part of our celebration includes an iconic cover recreation in every 2024 issue, which you've seen throughout the year. We jumped at the chance to have Eric participate in this, and I'm not going to give away the amazing cover work or the recreation, but I do encourage readers and listeners to pick up our 50th anniversary keepsake issue to see the cover recreation that he chose and learn why he chose that one, and of course the process in interpreting it, because you have a really unique process in how you approach your artwork.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It means a lot to me.
Thank you. So, of course, it's great to be here admiring your space, and I'd like to start with introducing readers and listeners to you and your painting technique, because I did not know that about you until, of course, I sat down to interview you for the piece and talking about the ambidextrous approach that you have.
Right, which was totally accidental.
Right. So, do you mind sharing the story about how that came to be and how it influences your style?
I'll be glad to. It resulted from an injury. When I was putting up the Sidewalk Art Show back in 1998, I jerk lifted the tent arrangement. It's pretty heavy stuff. And I ripped the long head tent into the bicep to the point where I couldn't paint. It just got worse and worse. And then the next Sidewalk Art Show was coming around, and I hadn't gotten better. So I finally reoriented everything in the studio to a left-hand arrangement and painted that whole show left-handed.
Let me ask, when that happened, I mean, as an artist, how did that make you feel? Because you must have...
Helpless.
Did you think your career was over at that point?
It wasn't going to be over. I just couldn't imagine how long it would take to get back on my feet and be right-handed again. So rather than sit around, I'm not a guy who sits around anyway, I just thought, well, I've just got to learn to paint left-handed. I never could play basketball left-handed. I couldn't dribble to my left. All my friends believe me, they hear the ambidextrous artist, they're just laughing.
Yeah, and what's the process like? I mean, to even begin to do that when you weren't used to it.
You blunder for a while, and everything is ugly. And then all of a sudden, I guess a month into it maybe, I started to see some progress. You're making broad strokes because you don't have any fine skills with that non-dominant hand. But once it comes around, you're making beautiful gestural strokes that you probably wouldn't have made with your primary hand anyway. And it was turning out better. And so at the Sidewalk Art Show, I did better than I'd ever done. And an artist friend of mine said, give up the right hand. You're much better as a left-hander. It's more gestural, it's more raw, it has more emotion. You ought to stick with this.
That's so interesting, because I don't know how many people really think about that in terms of, you had mentioned when we spoke, the left brain and the right brain and how that works and kind of the emotional aspect. And so it seems like you really found an emotional sort of angle when you're painting left-handed.
It seemed to connect with something that was different inside me, and I still paint left-handed now because I like it, and I think it's better in many ways than the right hand. But the results they look like a different artist. I'm sort of fascinated with it at times. These things come roaring out of you, and you're very grateful for the process and to be the vehicle and the vessel for all this. But you almost look at it as a stranger at times like, gosh, who did that one? That doesn't look like me, but I like it. And
you have a lot of art. You walked us through your home briefly before we started our episode. And so you have so many different pieces of art, because it's not just oil and paint, but you also did sculpture inside the home. There's a fireplace mantle that you showed us that's incredible.
And sculpture was my main thing in college. I really wasn't much of a painter. That took a while to develop. And I started painting billboards at Creative Displays out on Patterson Avenue. That was what I was doing, to make enough money to get by, living with my parents, while I built up that skill set for painting.
Is this something that you saw yourself doing, when you wanted to be a grown-up? Is this something that you saw yourself doing?
No, Liz, I was naive enough to not look ahead. I thought this is the only thing that works for me. This is the only thing that makes sense for me. I'm going to chase it hard, and I'm going to work at it so hard it's going to somehow work.
Well, I think it's worked.
Yeah, it worked okay. I was really grateful that it turned out. It's wonderful to have made a living do what you love.
Well, and so you're a Roanoke native, yes?
Yes.
Right. So how has the local art scene influenced your work? I mean, you've been here for a long time, not only, influencing others, but being influenced.
I think it's a wonderful art scene. I've been influenced by many artists around here because they're all so daggone good. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm a big fan of Bill Rutherford and Mary Bullington and, gosh, a bunch of different ones that are just great painters. Frank Hobbs was amazing. Bill White was incredible. I mean, you can go down the list. We are overly blessed with talent in this valley. There are a lot of really strong, solid painters out there doing it.
Mm-hmm. And it must be interesting for you to see sort of the evolution of the landscape, too, because now we have murals in places.
Yes.
And, Bryce Cobb's, John Mural, they're all working on these big, huge pieces.
I'm a huge fan of John Mural.
Yeah.
He is really good. In fact, I'm trying to help with the Greenways. I'm going to donate a bunch of prints to fund his murals along the Greenway. Fantastic. Because I'm such a big fan of what he's doing. I think it's changing things so much for the better.
Mm-hmm. It's been fascinating to watch him work. So I'm sure as a fellow artist, it's very unique to see.
Oh, he's a nice guy, and he's made for murals. He really is.
And what's interesting is he never saw himself doing that before.
He was a teacher, right?
Yeah.
High school teacher.
So when he kind of dove into it, he realized how. I mean, I'm not sure he realized how great he was, and we all did. We all knew he was fantastic at it.
He's great at it.
He's very modest.
And he is very modest, but most people can't tackle scale of that nature. And he's done something on the Jefferson Street Bridge. It must be 200 feet long or something.
Right.
I mean, it's almost impossible for artists to blow up things like that and handle all the colors and the draftsmanship and the harmony of it all.
Right.
And he can do it.
And that's what's so interesting about artists in general, because you're looking for, again, that unique style that is his and his alone, but it's still reminiscent of what you're going to see throughout the area.
Yeah.
And to see all these unique murals has been really
Isn't it great?
Curious.
I mean, as you drive around Roanoke now, that one on Interstate of the Climber and the one in the brewery and everything, it's like, this is so cool. I hope we just keep on doing this because it's a very rich environment we're making here.
And I love hearing that you're so supportive of young artists, and of course you're welcoming people into the fold and making sure that they're part of that arts community.
Well, it's a great community, and the more the merrier, and it's great to see people from outside Roanoke coming in and giving us a bit of new blood and different ideas, and it's all healthy.
Right. So we're sitting here in your studio. There's a detail on every piece of this wall. Kurt, you have been through here before, or is this your first time here?
I've been here before,
Okay.
and there's a new detail to notice. There's 100 new details to notice every time you step in here.
Could spend days in here.
You could.
I mean, truly. And so in thinking about what it's like to work in your studio, Eric, how does your environment here, whether it's in here or in your home, because there's tons of art in your home as well,
right,
but how does that environment contribute to your creative process?
I think it really makes it easy. I wish every artist had a studio like this with workstations for every medium that you don't have to tear down at the end of the day and reconstruct the next day. I think part of the reason people don't do art is because logistically it's too hard to set up every day. So if you have a place dedicated to it, you can walk over there and do pastels, over there and do watercolor, over there and do oil and acrylic. You're going to be very productive because you're not spending any energy outside of the creative process itself.
Right.
So I'm very grateful for that.
And of course, this is years of work and experience put into it. But I mean, I think it's really
and redesigned the studio 100 times along the way.
That's an interesting part too. Like, is everything here just the way you want it, or are you always sort of tweaking?
Always tweaking. Did it last week with the oil palette. I found a better way to do things over there, and so I rebuilt that a little bit. But I will look at other artists when I get in other studios and think, oh, yes, that's a great idea. I've got to incorporate that. Sometimes I go online, like when I did the pastel station, what do professional pastelists who are really big time do in their studios? And so I followed that. I took all the labels off of the pastels, group them according to color and value, and that's the way you really move quickly and do great pastel work. But I never knew it until I went online and saw them doing it.
Right. Well, I mean, that's why you love the internet right now.
Oh my God, yeah, it's great. It's fabulous.
Well, and I love that, we're walking through your home, and even your laundry room has sort of like a little theme.
It does.
And it's clear that you find inspiration, not just here in Roanoke, but obviously wherever you go. I mean, the laundry room is a sort of an ode to New Orleans, maybe even a little creepy horror macabre.
And Marie Laveau's House of Voodoo in particular.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was down in Bourbon Street and all that stuff, which I loved, and I went into some of that voodoo stuff, and I thought, that's so cool. I'm going to recreate that. And a washroom is such a boring place. Liz, you know it is. You got a washer and a dryer and nothing else going on. So I thought, well, go to Kmart the day after Halloween and buy everything they have and make yourself a spooky room.
Well, and even the room next to it, the furnace room.
Yes. the craziest room ever. Yes.
I mean, there's a lot going on in there.
Everything tacky I've ever found in my life is in that one room. You know how people buy tacky things on the road and they'll sort of hide them because they can't put them anywhere?
Right.
I thought, well, I'm going to dedicate a room to it and just celebrate it. So that's what happened down there.
It's a pretty bold move, but not surprising from an artist, so you know. Well, and again, you walked us through your house, and so we went upstairs into your 2 rooms that have a lot of your artwork in them.
Yes.
And that's been pretty incredible to see. And we're going to have some video shared on our website and YouTube, but I'm curious about your experience and what it means to have these pieces that have shown at Hollins and other, arts programs, to be able to walk into your house and see these big, beautiful frames. And of course, they're work that has impacted you in some way.
It has.
Because many of them are pretty serious.
They are serious. That's the whole Southern Culture series. And I think it's been a cathartic thing to try to deal with all the things you were raised with in the South, including prejudice and racism, all these things, as well as the beauty of the South, but try to somehow come to grips with that on canvas and try to express ideas about what you think is important in relation to those things that you were taught when you were growing up.
Mm-hmm. And you made a comment about your legacy in terms of when you're no longer here, and these pieces that will outlast all of us.
Hopefully.
And so what that means to viewers who are going to be able to admire them.
Well, I hope they will tell the tale of where we were and where we were going as a culture. Hopefully it'll be a lot better in the future. But if it isn't, these will somehow instruct along the way about a better South that's possible for us. I think it's really important for us to stand up for what we believe, and artists have a unique opportunity visually to put out statements that perhaps can affect people and perhaps enlighten the conversation.
And so let's loop back to the Roanoker, because this is something that, you and Kurt worked together on a cover. What year was that, Kurt?
The family cover was 88. And I can't remember the year for the Eric cover. That's a little bit.
Can't either, but I look pretty young. There's no gray hair there.
And so one of the things that we wanted you to do was to recreate the iconic Roanoker cover. And, it was funny because all the artists, they have all these different options. And so actually we asked you, I'm pretty sure our art director was like, we have one with you on the cover. What would it be like to see you recreate that?
Right.
And so what was that approach like when we asked you to do that? Like,
I was flattered.
You have so many options to think of.
Well, I thought it was so much fun, and I was flattered that Anna would ask. But since I've been doing self-portraits all along the way, it seemed like a natural, rather than have a photograph of me just as an older dude, to put those self-portraits into play, because I think there's so much more expressive about what's on the inside of the artist. Self-portraits don't lie. You can look at the eyes of a self-portrait and you realize, even as the artist, what was going on when you painted it that you might not have realized during its creation. They can't hide anything. So I think they're fascinating and they're insightful, and I was just very grateful that the Roanoker decided to do something with them.
Well, and we'll talk about that kind of long-standing relationship here in a minute, but curious about for listeners and readers who want to learn more about your work. And so, do you open your studio to people who want to come by and see it?
Every now and then, yes. I do it for like elementary school groups, stuff like that.
Cool.
Hopefully that has a good influence on young people who don't see art as an option, but I want to let them know that, you can be creative in a normal life. You don't have to be a crazy weirdo to do this. You just have to be expressive. And also, I'm a dyslexic, so every time they come through, they see a list of dyslexics over on the wall. I'll be sure and tell them, I made a living. You can do this because I did this. And what you have is not going to hamper you in life. You just have to be more organized, work a little harder. You're going to do fine. So anyway, I love those opportunities to encourage people, whether it be in that realm or artistic, this is an option. You can do this. It's not impossible.
Right. Well, and for a lot of artists to be able to, if they were to come in here and see what it is, first of all, obviously you've got years of experience that are on these walls and on the pages. But even looking over here to my left with all these sketches, this is just one small component that they're looking at.
Right.
And I imagine that there are not a lot of artists who have the space available to them that you do.
Probably
truly.
not.
You have your own studio gallery in here.
Yeah, which is wonderful. But I credit it to my father. I was going to build this thing about 2/3 as big, and he said, nope. Build it too big, you'll grow right into it.
Really?
And he was so right. You needed all this space in the long run. But it's a nice thing to have a space to put all these things out and let people see. Again, as we did this morning, I think you can know me in a hurry if you look around, because all of it is here. And it also makes it much easier to work. If you can put all the sketchbooks out, you don't have to go rummaging through to find that next subject. It's right there. And you walk past it every day, and finally you go, yep, today's the day for that one. I'm going to paint the orchestra in Jefferson Center with Julie Hickox playing flute in the foreground, because I sketched it at one point, and put it down well enough that I can go back and use the sketch as a guide.
Well, that's interesting too, because that method, you can go to it when you're ready for it, because
Yes.
it might be sitting there for a while. I'll come back to it when I'm ready, and then all of a
Right.
sudden it's because it's easy for me as a writer to think about something that I want to do and then walk away from it and forget about it for
Me
forever.
too.
Forever.
Me too.
And so for
Yeah.
it to be right here in front of you, I think that's very clever for you to kind of revisit it whenever you feel like you're ready for it.
It's more necessary than clever.
Yeah.
Because if I don't write these things down, they'll slip away forever, and I'll never get them done. And if I don't get that idea down in a convincing manner in a sketch, there's no way it will migrate into a painting without that.
Right. So obviously, while I encourage artists to break into Eric's studio and admire all the work, but certainly you have, artwork throughout the area in different
Right.
exhibits and galleries, and, whether it's a temporary exhibit or something that is,
Sure.
throughout the year.
Sure.
But we'll certainly make sure to link anything that you send us over on our website so readers and listeners can learn more.
That'd be great.
But yeah,
Thank
you ever want to hold a gallery, we'll sponsor that. Cause
Thank you.
I mean, it's really neat to see everything. I imagine there would be a lot of artists, experienced and new, who would come in here and go, wow.
Well, it's great to compare notes with them. They come in, they have ideas I wouldn't have, and we sort of feed off each other. So always fun to have an artist in here.
Well, and I love that. I love that you're open to the collaboration. I think that
You
that's
have to be. It's
another reason Roanoke is amazing, because there's really no silo, there's no territorialism. It's really like a group
and
project.
I think artists by their very nature know that they never learn enough. It's all about learning anyway. That's why I'll take classes. I was watching videos this morning before you got here on painting. John Singer Sargent was one. Gosh, I can't remember the other. It was a color theory thing on YouTube. It was
I love
great.
that. There's always room to grow.
I don't know enough about color. I really don't. So yeah, there's always room to grow. And anybody that thinks they know it all, they're in trouble.
He just said he doesn't know anything. That's like the wildest statement I could possibly hear sitting in
I
here.
can use it more intelligently. I can.
Yeah.
I mean, I've used it well, but I can use it better. So that requires just studying.
Yeah.
And YouTube is a great place with a lot of tutorials,
Right.
some of which are very good.
Well, and we were talking real quick before we get into the Roanoker stuff. I was asking you a couple of questions about sort of the digital era these days.
Yeah, right.
And I love that you're not against it. for
I'm
lack
not.
of a better word.
I just don't know much about it.
Yeah.
I've done little creative things on my phone using the little brushes and pens they give you there, but I've never really explored it. And I'm no authority at all, but I think it's probably very exciting. And if they can be blown up to scale and somebody can do it well, why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the latest thing.
Yeah. So, Kurt, to bring you into this, you've collaborated with Eric on a few projects for the Roanoker, including those two covers. Curious about how you might describe his impact on the magazine's sort of visual storytelling for those pieces.
Well, it's been all positive. It's been completely positive, and he has such talent that it manifests itself wherever you can play it.
That's kind. Thank you very
The
much.
thing I want to ask about, Eric, is
Yeah.
is those two rooms up there, your southern rooms, reflect your vision and your hopes, and we did the cover story on your brothers and your parents back in '88, and I think that they also exhibit those traits. Yours are visual, but those people, you had the most maybe enlightened judge in the history of Roanoke.
Thank you. Thank you.
A lady who was, to my experience, the best letter writer there could ever be.
She was a wonderful soul. Still is.
And a brother who's been on city council, run the transportation union, another brother who's outdoors taking care of things.
He does
Talk
conservation
about
easements.
your family a little bit, please.
Well, we touched on the brothers there. Broadus does conservation easements. He's a real ecology guy, which I am too. I'm a tree hugger, and I appreciate everything he's done. He's been president of the Blue Ridge Parkway Foundation, for instance. That's huge. That helps a lot. Brother Bev did the Transportation Museum, did a great job of it. I mean, that's an important part of Roanoke. You look at the 611, stuff like that. That's iconic. And he honored that very well in his work. And Mom and Dad, thank you for mentioning them in glowing terms. I totally agree. The finest man and woman I've ever known, I think. And they're both gone now, but guys, they left such a legacy of kindness and good works. And my father, I've got to sing his praises. He was just amazing. And he was a judge, but he knew he didn't like the job. He stayed there because he knew it could help people, particularly alcoholics. 75% of his cases were alcohol related. So he started a program on his own time. Every Thursday night, he'd meet with alcoholics and encourage them and try to help them get better. So even if it was Christmas, Mom would make cookies. He'd go and meet with these guys just to keep them on the right road. So when he died and we were at the visitation, a guy came up to me and said, "Your father saved my life." And I said, "Well, thank you very much." He said, No, you're not listening. Your father saved my life." Now that tells you something right there. That's a life well lived. And then his retirement he gave to the creation of Jefferson Center. It would be a parking lot if Dad hadn't grabbed it. He was president of the senior class at Jefferson. He felt an obligation to do that. So he did it. Mom was with him every step of the way, helped him write letters for, funding and all that. Just an incredible couple. Just, I don't know, I'm just so grateful to have been around these people. Mom and Dad were just amazing. Yeah. So I feel very, very lucky.
One of the things that you've done in collaboration with the Roanoker over the years was a best of cover.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that. I mean, we've done the best of 38 years now.
That sounds right.
So every year we need a cover, and
Right.
every year we have a struggle. That year we didn't have a struggle because you did it.
Well, you were kind of turned to me, and I remember on the phone, the idea sort of forming. The Life of Brian, I think, had come out, and we had these huge letters in the way they presented their logo for the film, and I thought, gosh, best of in big letters might be a fun thing to do. So I think you and I sort of thought, well, guys, if we can get in kayaking and Mill Mountain, all the other things that are Roanoke, that would be nice to throw in around those letters. So once the idea was there, it was sort of easy to flesh it out, and I was grateful for the opportunity again. You guys have been very good to throw stuff my way.
I believe that cover is even framed in our office
Is it?
in the
Cool.
in the
Yeah.
publisher hallway. Yeah.
Back in, when was this? 99, the 25th anniversary of the Roanoker. 25 years ago, it turns out.
Yeah.
That was the era of the doers profiles. Remember
Yes. Yes.
that? And I don't know if you remember this.
I do remember that. Yes, thank you.
Talk to us about that.
You look very official in that photo.
Oh, I was overly serious at that point, I do believe.
Exactly right. I thought, man, that's
Yeah. That's, but no, that was a nice chance to be shown at the easel, doing what I do, doing what I love. And, that's what I do every day. Every day you come out here, it's a life lived alone, but a life very happily spent because you're doing exactly what you want to do, exactly in the way you want to do it. I feel just incredibly lucky. So that sort of summed it up in that photograph.
Heading into the next 50 years of the Roanoker, it brings to my mind the vagaries of the creative process kind of thing.
Sure.
I know John Updike, I don't want to drop any names, but he told me one time, it gets really hard
Just you
when
and
you get
John
older.
out for a beer?
And I know it gets really hard when you get older.
Yeah.
I mean, the inspiration, the years that I had doing short stories that just kind of clicked.
Right.
That I don't really experience anymore. Talk to us about how that works with you, how you keep that spark alive, how you keep rolling.
Well, I guess we were talking about learning something new all the time. In terms of art, I look at people in museums, Kurt, and I just am awed by the skill levels, the paintings that are just impossible to do, seemingly, and that always is a carrot out there. I'll never get that good, but it's something to keep me moving and growing and learning, and that sort of keeps it fresh. And then as you see all these workstations around, I find if I get stale in one department, I switch stations. I go to another one. Or I go sketching at the Salem Fair or something. I make myself do something that will light it up again, spark it up. The Salem Fair is incredible. That never gets old. There are so many characters. It's almost like Texas Tavern on steroids. Gosh, they're fabulous. And the light's fabulous, and the motion and the sound. And if that doesn't inspire you, you should have your pulse taken because something's wrong.
Well, and I love that you name a feature or an event that happens annually. So,
Yeah.
I mean, are there other things in the area that you could go to, like if I'm feeling
Yeah.
stuck, I'll go there?
Used to be the city market. Now it's gotten too gentrified for me, to be honest. I liked it when it was rougher. It had more characters and more raw quality to it. But Gay Likes Fiddlers Convention, I've done that and loved it. The music's incredible. The people are fabulous. The characters, their faces are wonderful.
You should have that portrait of the dancers up upstairs on that second floor.
Yes, exactly. That was Saltville, Bluegrass again. And I don't know, there are things all around us that are just gold mines. And it's just a matter of, like you saw the Buchanan Swinging Bridge there. I mean, everything that you did in childhood, if you grew up around here, you saw it all. You had one take of it. And if you return to that, it's got resonance, emotional gold. if you get back that way. My family used to go up North 11 all the time to Natural Bridge and Washington Lee, and so I walked that bridge 1,000 times. So I want to paint that bridge. It's part of my life. And that's the way with everything around here. You just feel close to it and you're invested. So it doesn't take much to get motivated to paint it if you've lived it.
So here's the thing. So when I moved here about 15 years ago, and I'm sort of getting to know people, and your name came up frequently as somebody in the arts and culture community. Not necessarily I have to hunt you down and get to know you, but just to be familiar with your work, because I see it so often. And so Kurt, for your relationship and your knowledge of being here in Roanoke for so long, what do you think it means to have Eric mean so much to the Roanoke Valley, to this community as a whole?
He's a true treasure. There are people whose names not too many, and he's certainly one of them who comes to mind.
It's very kind. Thank you, Kurt.
It's a visual art that helps a lot, but the dude himself makes it happen.
Right.
Thank you, and thanks for helping make it happen in terms of making career exposure from the Roanoker, and it just meant a lot to stay visible to the public. When you're trying to be noticed and have your work noticed, you need a little help, and thank you.
Well, and the good part of that is it enriches what we do as well. So it's
I'm glad.
Been great for us too.
I'm glad.
Yeah, it works both ways.
Yeah.
But so let's talk really briefly, before we get too far outside of it. You're an award-winning artist, and you're one of the few, if not the only, I believe I read, that has the ambidextrous approach to what you do.
Yeah, well, again, it wasn't my choice.
It's just a fascinating thing to me that...
I think when it happened, Liz, I thought, well, I can't change it. I've got to work with this, so I might as well use it for branding. And I remember being at Brook Green Gardens and having, this was down in South Carolina, I was seeing the sculpture, and I was sketching, and somebody walked up to me and started talking about an artist they had met and they were really impressed with. They didn't tell me anything about the work. They told me about what he had done in branding that had stuck in their minds. I thought, well, I might as well use this ambidextrous thing then. And so that's the way I did it. And it, the fact that it was turning out better work than the right hand, it wasn't a one-trick pony. Right. It was something meaningful that was producing really strong work. So I thought, well, why not go with it?
I mean, a different artist might have given up.
I don't think artists will give up.
No?
The creativity is something you can't deny, and you just have to get it out there some way or another. I mean, you see these guys around, they're so inspiring. There's a guy that used to be at the Sidewalk Art Show, and he would do it with his mouth. And you see on videos of artists doing it with their toes or whatever. I mean, it's heartbreaking because they've been denied the regular way to do this, but it says everything about their heart and soul that they're going to find a way to create. So I think, you learn what you have to learn. I think people could do so much more with their non-dominant hand than they realize. They're just not made to do it.
I can barely eat cereal with my left hand, so I'm not real sure I can take you up on that one. But, I agree. It's interesting just that you didn't let that stop you, and that it actually helped you even grow even more so than if it hadn't happened, I think.
Yeah, it was a very positive thing. I didn't think it was positive at the time because it hurt so badly and because the work was so terrible to start with. But once it came around, I won second place in the Sidewalk Art Show with it. I've never done that before. Third was the highest I ever got. So it's like, well, there's a message there, that it's good work and it's strong work. And when you have your artist friends telling you it's stronger than your regular work, well, it's not that one-trick pony then. You might as well run with it.
Now, I expect you've been here, you're a native, you've been here long enough where you probably go to the grocery store and run into 17 people that you know. But as far as people who might approach you about your artwork, I mean, what does that mean to you when somebody in the community recognizes you or your art? It
means so much. It doesn't happen often, but every now and then you'll just say hello to a stranger or something. They'll go, by the way, I love your artwork. I went, oh, thank you so much. Or the bad guy in Kroger or something. I mean, you don't expect it to come out of nowhere, but if somebody says something, it just means the world that somehow what you've done has touched them.
Well, it sounds like a true artist then.
Oh, I'm very grateful for those moments, yeah.
Well, thank you. Kurt, is there anything else you want to add or remark on? Well, thank you again for doing our iconic cover recreation.
My pleasure.
And, of course, for hosting us in your studio. It's just absolutely incredible. Like I said, anytime you want to invite a bunch of people in, we'll just come over here and hang out.
Come back anytime. The door's always open.
There are details everywhere. I mean, it's unbelievable. I could spend probably weeks here, honestly,
It's
and
a
find
fun
something
place,
new every
isn't it?
single time.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. Again, thank you again so much for being on the episode today and for
Thank
all the
you,
work
Liz.
that you did for our 50th anniversary keepsake issue, and of course over the 50 years that we've done it. I mean,
Thank you, Liz, and thank you, Kurt, for being so good to me through the years.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. And so, again, thank you to the Roanoker's editor-in-chief, Kurt Rheinheimer, for joining us for a special episode. And huge thanks to Eric Fitzpatrick for sharing his amazing art with us over the decades, for hosting us in his very own studio for this episode, and for being such an important part of the Roanoker magazine's legacy, as well as Roanoke Valley's legacy as a whole. Thank you again. To our listeners, don't forget to check out Eric's work and his cover feature in our 50th anniversary issue of the Roanoker. You can find more information at theroanoker.com or catch the issue on newsstands now.